The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Adam Diaz stood in the empty hallway, clutching Ryan Ross's navy hoodie against his chest, like it might disappear if he loosened his grip. The fabric still held traces of Ryan's cologne, that subtle mix of cedar and something indefinably warm that had been driving Adam quietly insane for months. What had started as a simple request to borrow something warm had somehow stretched into 45 minutes of conversation. And now the building was so quiet, Adam could hear his own heartbeat echoing off the linoleum floors. Ryan leaned against the wall beside the vending machines, his dark hair catching the harsh light as he talked about everything and nothing, his hands moving in those animated gestures that Adam had memorized without meaning to. There was something different about tonight, something in the way Ryan's eyes kept finding his and lingering just a beat too long. Something in the way the space between them seemed charged with an electricity that made Adam's skin feel hypersensitive. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, lined with bulletin boards covered in layers of flyers for study groups and campus events. The overhead lights cast everything in stark relief, creating sharp shadows that made the familiar space feel almost cinematic. Adam had walked through this corridor hundreds of times, but tonight it felt like a stage set for something momentous, something that would change everything. "You know," Ryan said, his voice softer now that they were alone, "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about feeling like you're always pretending to be someone else." He paused, studying Adam's face with an intensity that made Adam's breath catch. "I think I know what you mean." Adam felt his world tilt slightly on its axis. They had been dancing around something for weeks now, ever since that night when Ryan had shown up at his dorm room after another fight with his girlfriend, looking lost and asking questions that seemed to have nothing to do with relationship advice and everything to do with something neither of them had been brave enough to name. "Do you?" Adam whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might break whatever spell was weaving itself around them in this empty corridor. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant hum of the building's heating system and the faint sound of music playing from someone's room 3 floors up. Adam could smell the faint scent of industrial cleaning supplies mixed with Ryan's cologne, could hear the soft whisper of fabric as Ryan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments. This story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget." Ryan pushed off from the wall, taking a step closer, and Adam could feel the heat radiating from his body even through the borrowed hoodie. "I keep thinking about that night when I came over," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "When I asked you what it felt like to know exactly who you are. You looked at me like you wanted to say something, but couldn't." Adam's fingers tightened on the hoodie, feeling the soft cotton compress under his grip. "I wanted to say a lot of things." "Like what?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross, but Adam could feel himself moving toward the edge anyway, drawn by the vulnerability in Ryan's eyes and the way his presence seemed to fill every empty space in Adam's chest. But to understand how they had arrived at this moment, standing in an empty hallway at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, holding each other's secrets in the spaces between words, you would have to go back 3 months earlier to a different kind of conversation in a different kind of silence. It had started with a text message that Adam had read 17 times before working up the courage to respond. Ryan's girlfriend, Sarah Watson, had broken up with him again, this time apparently for good. And he was asking if Adam wanted to grab coffee and maybe help him figure out where everything had gone wrong. Adam had stared at his phone screen, watching the cursor blink in the empty reply field, knowing that agreeing to this meant signing up for another session of playing the supportive friend, while his heart quietly broke into smaller and smaller pieces. The text had come at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, which should have been Adam's first clue that something was seriously wrong. Ryan wasn't the type to reach out in the middle of the night unless he was genuinely struggling. Adam had been lying in bed, scrolling through social media and trying to ignore his economics homework, when his phone had lit up with Ryan's name. "Hey, are you awake? Sarah and I are done for real this time. Could really use someone to talk to tomorrow if you're free. I know it's a lot to ask." Adam had typed and deleted a dozen different responses, ranging from casual, "Sure, no problem," to overly concerned, "Are you okay?" Do you need me to come over right now? In the end, he had settled for something in the middle. Of course. Want to meet at Grind Coffee around 2? But he had texted back yes anyway, because that was what you did when someone you cared about was hurting. Even if caring about them was slowly killing you. They had met at the little cafe near campus, the one with mismatched chairs and walls covered in local artwork that never seemed to change. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had been there for 20 years and knew most of the regular students by name. She had a habit of giving free refills to anyone who looked like they were having a rough day, and she had taken one look at Ryan and immediately brought him a second cup without being asked. Ryan had looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his eyes rimmed with the kind of redness that came from either too little sleep or too much thinking. He had been wearing the same flannel shirt he had worn to their American literature class the day before, and there was a coffee stain on the sleeve that it suggested he had been functioning on caffeine and anxiety for longer than was healthy. He had ordered his coffee black, which was unusual for him, and spent the first 10 minutes stirring it without taking a sip. Adam had watched him, noting the way his shoulders were hunched forward as if he was trying to make himself smaller, the way his leg bounced restlessly under the small table. She said I was emotionally unavailable, Ryan had finally said, breaking the silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. That I was always somewhere else, even when I was right there with her. Adam had felt something twist in his chest, a familiar ache that he had learned to carry like a constant companion. What do you think she meant by that? I don't know. Ryan's laugh had been hollow, bitter around the edges. Maybe that I was never really present, like I was always waiting for something else, something different. He had looked up then, catching Adam's eyes across the small table. Does that make me a terrible person? The question had caught Adam feet on off guard with its raw vulnerability. Ryan was usually so confident, so sure of himself and his place in the world. Seeing him like this, uncertain and hurting, made Adam want to reach across the table and take his hands, to promise him that everything would be okay even if Adam wasn't sure he believed it himself. No, Adam had said, perhaps too quickly, perhaps with too much feeling. It makes you human. Sometimes we don't know what we want until we figure out what we don't want. Ryan had studied his face for a long moment, something shifting in his expression that Adam couldn't quite read. You always know exactly what to say. How do you do that? The question had caught Adam off guard, mainly because it was so far from the truth. He never knew what to say, especially not to Ryan, especially not when Ryan was looking at him like he was searching for something specific, and Adam was terrified of what might happen if he found it. I don't, Adam had admitted. Most of the time I feel like I'm just guessing. But you seem so sure of yourself, like you know exactly who you are and what you want. Adam had nearly laughed at that, if it hadn't been so painfully ironic. He had known exactly what he wanted for months now, had known it with a clarity that was both terrifying and impossible to act on. What he wanted was sitting across from him, stirring cold coffee, and asking for advice about a relationship that Adam secretly hoped would stay broken. The irony wasn't lost on him that Ryan was coming to him for relationship advice when Adam had never had a serious relationship himself. He had dated a few people in high school, awkward encounters that had felt more like going through the motions than genuine connection. But with Ryan, everything felt different, more real, more significant. Even their friendship carried a weight that Adam had never experienced before. I think everyone's just guessing, he had said instead. Some people are just better at hiding it. That conversation had opened something between them, a door that neither of them had been able to close. Ryan had started coming around more often, showing up at Adam's dorm room with takeout food and questions that seemed to dig deeper each time. He would sprawl across Adam's bed like he belonged there, talking about his family, his fears, his dreams, his growing sense that his life was somehow happening to someone else. The visits had become a routine that Adam both cherished and dreaded. Ryan would text around dinner time asking if Adam was free, and then appear 20 minutes later with Chinese food or pizza and a restless energy that suggested he had been thinking too much again. They would eat sitting on Adam's floor, backs against the bed, talking about everything and nothing, while Adam tried not to notice the way Ryan's knee sometimes pressed against his thigh, or the way his laugh made Adam's chest feel tight with longing. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a character, Ryan had said one night, lying on his back and staring at the ceiling while Adam pretended to study at his desk. Like I'm following a script that someone else wrote for me and I don't know how to improvise. Adam had turned in his chair to look at him, taking in the way the lamplight caught the sharp angles of his face, the way his t-shirt had ridden up slightly to reveal a strip of skin that Adam had to force himself not to stare at. Ryan's hands were folded behind his head, and his expression was thoughtful, almost melancholy. "What would you do if you could throw away the script?" Adam had asked. Ryan had been quiet for so long that Adam had started to wonder if he had fallen asleep. The silence had stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of Adam's desk lamp and the distant sound of someone practicing piano in the music building across the quad. Then he had turned his head, fixing Adam with a look so intense it had made Adam's breath catch. "I don't know," Ryan had said. "That's what scares me." There had been something in his voice, something raw and uncertain, that had made Adam want to cross the room and hold him until the fear went away. But he had stayed in his chair, gripping his pen so tightly his knuckles had gone white, because crossing that line would have meant admitting things he wasn't ready to admit, wanting things he wasn't sure he was allowed to want. The night everything changed had started like any other. Adam had been attempting to write a paper on post-colonial literature when Ryan had appeared at his door, looking like he had been walking in the rain even though the sky had been clear. He had been holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression that Adam had learned to recognize as dangerous, the kind of look that meant Ryan was thinking too hard about things he usually tried to ignore. The wine was a cheap bottle of red that Ryan had probably picked up at the corner store, but he was holding it like it was something precious. His hair was mussed as if he had been running his hands through it, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made Adam's stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. "I brought provisions," Ryan had announced, holding up the bottle. "I figured if we're going to have another existential crisis, we might as well do it properly." Adam had let him in because he always let him in, even when he knew it was probably a bad idea for his emotional well-being. They had settled on Adam's bed with the wine and a bag of chips that Ryan had produced from his jacket pocket, falling into the kind of easy conversation that had become their routine. But there had been something different about Ryan that night, something restless and electric that had made the air between them feel charged. He had been more tactile than usual, his hand lingering on Adam's shoulder when he laughed, his knee pressing against Adam's thigh as they sat cross-legged facing each other. Every casual touch had sent sparks through Adam's nervous system, making it difficult to concentrate on anything Ryan was saying. The wine had loosened both of their tongues, and their conversation had meandered through topics ranging from their childhood fears to their dreams for the future. Ryan had told him about the pressure he felt from his parents to choose a practical major, how he sometimes felt like he was living someone else's life. Adam had shared his own struggles with feeling like an outsider, the way he had learned to edit himself in social situations to fit in better. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan had said after they had polished off half the bottle of wine. "You always ask me things. This is different." Ryan had been playing with the label on the wine bottle, peeling it off in small strips. "It's going to sound weird." Adam had felt his heart rate pick up, some instinct warning him that they were approaching dangerous territory. The room suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, and he was hyper-aware of every detail. The way the lamplight cast shadows across Ryan's face, the sound of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body. "Okay. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to kiss someone you weren't supposed to kiss?" The question had hit Adam like a physical blow, stealing the breath from his lungs and making his hands tremble slightly. He had taken a sip of wine to buy himself time, trying to figure out how to respond without giving himself away completely. The wine tasted like copper pennies on his tongue, and he could feel his pulse hammering in his throat. "What do you mean by supposed to?" he had managed. "I don't know, someone off limits, someone who would change everything if you did it." Ryan had looked up then, his eyes dark and searching. "Someone who might kiss you back." Adam had felt the world shift beneath him, like the ground had suddenly become unstable. The question hung between them, loaded with implications that neither of them seemed ready to acknowledge directly. He could feel Ryan watching him, waiting for an answer, and the silence stretched taut with possibility. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because I can't stop thinking about it." Ryan's voice had been barely above a whisper. "And I don't know what that means." They had stared at each other across the small space between them, the silence stretching taut with possibilities that neither of them seemed brave enough to voice. Adam had wanted to reach out, to close the distance, to answer Ryan's question with actions instead of words. But the fear had been stronger than the want, the terror of ruining everything they already had. The air in the room felt thick, charged with electricity that made every nerve ending in Adam's body hyper-aware. He could smell Ryan's cologne mixed with the wine on his breath, could see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. The space between them felt both infinite and non-existent, a chasm that could be crossed with a single word or gesture. "I think," Adam had said carefully, "that sometimes we think about things because we're trying to figure out something about ourselves. And that's okay, even if it's scary." Ryan had nodded, but his eyes had never left Adam's face. What if figuring it out changes everything? Maybe everything needs to change. The words had slipped out before Adam could stop them, carrying more weight than he had intended. Ryan had gone very still, his breathing shallow, and for a moment Adam had thought he might have pushed too far. The silence that followed felt loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Then Ryan had leaned forward, closing some of the distance between them, and Adam had felt his heart stop completely. He could see the flecks of gold in Ryan's brown eyes, could count his eyelashes if he wanted to. The moment stretched between them like a held breath, full of potential energy waiting to be released. "Adam?" Ryan had whispered, and there had been something in the way he said his name that made it sound like a question and an answer all at once. But before anything could happen, Ryan's phone had buzzed with a text message, breaking the spell. He had glanced at it automatically, and whatever he had seen there had made him pull back, the moment dissolving like sugar in water. The interruption had been jarring, like being woken from a vivid dream, and Adam had felt the loss of it like a physical ache. "I should probably go," he had said, but he hadn't moved, and his eyes had still been fixed on Adam's face like he was trying to memorize it. "You don't have to. I know. But I think I need to figure some things out first." He had left that night, but not before hesitating in the doorway for so long that Adam had started to hope he might change his mind. Instead, he had just said Adam's name again, soft and uncertain, before disappearing into the hallway. Adam had listened to his footsteps fading down the corridor, then sat on his bed staring at the door for a long time, replaying every moment of the evening and wondering if he had imagined the electricity in the air. The next few weeks had been a special kind of torture. Ryan had been avoiding him, not completely, but obviously, showing up less often and leaving earlier when he did come by. Their conversations had become careful, polite, stripped of the intimacy that had been building between them for months. Adam had felt like he was losing his mind, replaying that night over and over, wondering if he had imagined the electricity in the air or misread the signals completely. The change in Ryan's behavior had been subtle but unmistakable. Where before he would sprawl across Adam's bed like he owned it, now he sat carefully in the desk chair, maintaining a safe distance. Their conversations, once flowing and natural, now felt stilted and awkward, full of false starts and uncomfortable silences. Ryan would check his phone constantly, as if looking for an excuse to leave, and he never stayed longer than an hour. Adam had started to second-guess every interaction they had ever had, wondering if he had been reading too much into friendly gestures and casual touches. Maybe Ryan's question about kissing someone he wasn't supposed to kiss had been purely hypothetical, a random thought brought on by too much wine and not enough sleep. Maybe Adam had projected his own feelings onto the situation, seeing romantic tension where there was only confusion and friendship. He had thrown himself into his classes and his part-time job at the campus bookstore, trying to distract himself from the Ryan-shaped hole that seemed to have opened up in his daily routine. But everything reminded him of their conversations, Their shared jokes, the way Ryan's presence had made even the most ordinary moments feel significant. The bookstore had become his refuge, a place where he could lose himself in the familiar routine of shelving books and helping customers. The smell of paper and ink was comforting, and the quiet atmosphere gave him space to think without the constant reminders of Ryan that seemed to lurk around every corner of campus. It was Christine Hughes who had finally forced him to confront what was happening. She was his co-worker at the bookstore, a sharp-eyed senior who had apparently been watching his slow-motion breakdown with growing concern. Christine was the kind of person who saw through people's defenses like they were made of tissue paper, and she had a way of asking direct questions that made it impossible to deflect or lie. "You look like someone stole your favorite book and then ran it over with a truck," she had said one afternoon as they restocked the poetry section. "What's going on?" Adam had tried to deflect, mumbling something about midterm stress and too much caffeine. But Christine had given him a look that suggested she wasn't buying it for a second. She was tall and angular, with short black hair and glasses that made her look perpetually skeptical. She had been working at the bookstore longer than anyone else and had seen enough heartbroken college students to recognize the signs. "Try again," she had said, crossing her arms and fixing him with a stare that made him feel like he was being x-rayed. "And this time, tell me the truth." Eventually, he had found himself telling her everything, or at least a carefully edited version of everything that didn't include the part where he had been secretly in love with Ryan for months. He had told her about their friendship, about the night with the wine and the almost moment, about the way Ryan had been pulling away ever since. "So let me get this straight," Christine had said when he finished. "This guy comes over, drinks your wine, asks you hypothetical questions about kissing people he's not supposed to kiss, almost kisses you himself, and then disappears for 3 weeks. And you're wondering if you imagined the whole thing?" When you put it like that, it sounds obvious. That's because it is obvious. He's freaking out because he's figured something out about himself and doesn't know what to do with it. Christine had shelved a book with perhaps more force than necessary. The question is, what are you going to do about it? "Nothing. What can I do? If he wanted to talk to me, he would." Or maybe he's waiting for you to make the first move. Maybe he's just as scared as you are. The idea that Ryan might be scared hadn't occurred to Adam. In his mind, Ryan was confident, self-assured, the kind of person who knew what he wanted and went after it. The possibility that he might be struggling with the same fears and uncertainties that kept Adam awake at night was both comforting and terrifying. "What if I'm wrong?" and Adam had asked. "What if I make things weird between us and lose him completely? What if you're right and you lose him anyway because you were too scared to try?" Christine's words had stayed with him for days, echoing in his head every time he saw Ryan across the quad or caught a glimpse of him in the dining hall. They had been avoiding each other so successfully that Adam had started to wonder if they would just drift apart completely, their almost moment becoming nothing more than a story he would replay in his mind for years to come. The campus had felt different during those weeks, like a familiar place that had been subtly rearranged. Adam found himself taking different routes to class to avoid the spots where he and Ryan used to meet, avoiding the cafe where they had shared so many conversations. Even his dorm room felt strange, too quiet without Ryan's presence, filling the space with his restless energy and easy laughter. Then Ryan had texted him, a simple message that had made Adam's heart race. "Can I borrow a hoodie? It's freezing, and I left mine at my mom's." It was such a normal request, the kind of thing friends asked each other all the time, but something about the timing had felt significant. Adam had stared at the message for 10 minutes, reading it over and over, trying to decipher any hidden meaning in the casual words. Was this Ryan's way of reaching out, of trying to bridge the gap that had opened between them? Or was it really just about borrowing clothes? Adam had texted back that he could pick one up from his room, and they had arranged to meet in the hallway outside the library after Adam's evening class. The message exchange had been brief and polite, but Adam had detected something in the subtext, a hesitation that suggested this was about more than just staying warm, which brought them back to this moment. Standing in the empty corridor with the borrowed hoodie between them like a tangible representation of all the things they had been too afraid to say. Ryan was closer now, close enough that Adam could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough that the space between them felt electric with possibility. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, lit by fluorescent lights that cast everything in stark relief. The walls were lined with bulletin boards covered in layers of flyers for study groups and campus events, creating a collage of college life that seemed to fade into background noise when Ryan was this close. Adam could hear the distant hum of the building's heating system and the soft whisper of fabric as Ryan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "You said you wanted to say a lot of things," Ryan repeated, his voice soft but insistent. "Tell me one of them." Adam felt his resolve crumbling, worn down by weeks of careful distance and the magnetic pull of Ryan's presence. The hoodie felt heavy in his hands, like it was anchoring him to this moment, to this choice that would change everything between them. "I wanted to say that I think about that night all the time, that I keep wondering what would have happened if your phone hadn't buzzed." "What do you think would have happened?" The question was barely a whisper, and Ryan was close enough now that Adam could feel his breath against his cheek. The hoodie was still clutched between them, but it felt less like a barrier and more like an anchor, something solid to hold on to while the world shifted around them. Adam could smell Ryan's cologne, that familiar scent that had been driving him crazy for months, mixed with the faint smell of coffee and the cold night air that clung to his jacket. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across Ryan's face, but they couldn't diminish the intensity in his eyes or the way his presence seemed to fill every empty space in the hallway. "I think," Adam said, his voice shaking slightly, "that you would have kissed me, and I think I would have let you." Ryan's eyes fluttered closed for a moment, and when he opened them again, there was something new there, something that looked like relief mixed with terror. His hands were trembling slightly, and Adam could see the rapid pulse at the base of his throat. "I've been thinking about kissing you for weeks," Ryan admitted. "Even before that night, I kept telling myself it was just curiosity or confusion or some kind of quarter-life crisis. But it's not, is it?" Adam shook his head, not trusting his voice. The admission hung between them like a bridge, solid and real and terrifying in its implications. Everything they had been dancing around for months was finally being said out loud, and the relief was almost overwhelming. "I ended things with Sarah because I couldn't stop thinking about you. Because every time I was with her, I wished I was somewhere else, with someone else." Ryan reached out then, his fingers brushing against Adam's free hand. "I've never felt like this about a guy before. I don't know what I'm doing." The touch was electric, sending shockwaves up Adam's arm and straight to his heart. Ryan's fingers were warm despite the cold night air, and they trembled slightly as they traced patterns on the back of Adam's hand. It was such a small gesture, but it felt monumental, like the first crack in a dam that had been holding back months of suppressed feeling. "Neither do I," Adam whispered, "but I know how I feel about you." "How do you feel about me?" The words came easier than Adam had expected, like they had been waiting just beneath the surface for permission to exist. "Like you're the most important person in my world. Like every conversation we have matters more than anything else happening in my life. Like I've been holding my breath for months, waiting for you to see me the way I see you." Ryan's hand found his completely now, their fingers intertwining with a naturalness that felt like coming home. His palm was warm and slightly rough from his part-time job at the campus recreation center, and Adam could feel the calluses on his fingertips from years of playing guitar. "I see you," he said. "I've been seeing you, I just didn't know what to do about it." "What do you want to do about it now?" Ryan smiled then, the first real smile Adam had seen from him in weeks, and it was like watching the sun come out after a storm. It transformed his entire face, erasing the tension and uncertainty that had been there moments before, replacing it with something that looked like hope mixed with joy. "I want to kiss you, if that's okay." Adam nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and Ryan stepped closer, eliminating the last few inches between them. The hoodie fell forgotten to the floor as Ryan's hands came up to cup Adam's face, his thumbs brushing across his cheekbones with a gentleness that made Adam's knees weak. The touch was reverent, almost worshipful, as if Ryan was afraid Adam might disappear if he wasn't careful enough. His hands were warm against Adam's skin, and his touch sent sparks racing through Adam's nervous system, making him feel more alive than he had in weeks. "I'm terrified," Ryan whispered. "Me too. But I'm more terrified of not doing this." When Ryan kissed him, it was nothing like Adam had imagined, and everything he had hoped for all at once. It was soft at first, tentative, like Ryan was asking a question with his lips. But when Adam kissed him back, threading his fingers through Ryan's hair and pulling him closer, the kiss deepened into something urgent and certain, like they were both finally admitting something they had been denying for far too long. Ryan's lips were warm and soft, and he tasted like coffee and mint gum and something that was uniquely him. The kiss was gentle but insistent, full of months of suppressed longing and the relief of finally giving in to what they both wanted. Adam felt like he was drowning and being saved at the same time, overwhelmed by the intensity of finally having what he had wanted for so long. They broke apart eventually, breathing heavily, their foreheads pressed together as they tried to process what had just happened. Adam could feel Ryan's heart beating against his chest, rapid and strong, matching the rhythm of his own. The hallway around them seemed to fade away, leaving only this moment, this feeling, this perfect rightness of being exactly where they belonged. "Wow," Ryan breathed, his voice full of wonder. "Yeah, wow." They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other and breathing in the reality of what they had finally done. The hallway was still empty, the fluorescent lights still humming overhead, but everything felt different now, like the world had rearranged itself around them. "What happens now?" Adam asked, because someone had to voice the question that was hanging between them. Ryan pulled back slightly so he could look at Adam's face, his hand still cradling his cheeks. His eyes were bright with unshed tears, and there was a vulnerability in his expression that made Adam's chest ache with tenderness. "I don't know. I've never done this before, any of this." The admission was raw and honest, and it made Adam love him even more. Ryan had always seemed so confident, so sure of himself and his place in the world. Seeing him like this, uncertain but brave enough to try anyway, made Adam want to protect him from every hurt the world might throw at them. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight, but you want to figure it out. With me?" The vulnerability in Ryan's voice made Adam's chest ache with tenderness. He could see the fear there, the uncertainty about what this meant and where they went from here. But he could also see hope, fragile and tentative, but real. "I've wanted to figure it out with you since the first time you showed up at my door with takeout and existential questions." Ryan laughed, a sound that was half relief and half disbelief. "I was so obvious, wasn't I? Coming over all the time, asking you all those weird questions? I thought I was being subtle." "You were about as subtle as a hurricane, but I thought you were just confused about Sarah, not about me." "I was confused about everything. I kept telling myself that what I felt for you was just friendship, that I was projecting because you were the first person who really listened to me. But then I would catch myself staring at your mouth when you talked, or thinking about what it would be like to fall asleep next to you, and I couldn't pretend anymore." Adam felt heat spread through his chest at Ryan's words, at the honesty in his voice, and the way he was looking at him like he was something precious and surprising. The confession was everything Adam had hoped to hear, but never dared to expect. "I love that you're telling me this," Adam said, "but I'm also kind of mad at you for making me think I was going crazy for weeks. You have every right to be mad. I was a coward. I was so scared of what it meant that I almost ruined everything." Ryan's thumbs traced patterns on Adam's cheekbones, and Adam leaned into the touch without thinking. "Can you forgive me for being an idiot?" "I think I can manage that." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the newness of it and the way it felt to finally stop holding back. Ryan's lips moved against his with growing confidence, and Adam could feel the last of his defenses crumbling away. This was what he had been waiting for, what he had been dreaming about during all those sleepless nights when he had stared at the ceiling and wondered what it would be like to kiss Ryan Ross. When they broke apart, Ryan rested his head against Adam's shoulder, and Adam wrapped his arms around him, holding him close and breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. They fit together perfectly, like two pieces of a puzzle that had finally found their proper places. "I should probably pick up your hoodie," Ryan said after a while, but he made no move to step away. It's not going anywhere. Neither am I, Ryan said, and there was a promise in his voice that made Adam's heart skip. If you'll have me. Are you kidding? I've been waiting for you for months. I'm not letting you go anywhere now. Ryan pulled back to look at him again, his eyes bright with something that looked like joy mixed with relief. I can't believe this is real. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out I dreamed the whole thing. If this is a dream, I don't want to wake up, even if it means everything changes, even if we don't know what we're doing. Adam considered the question seriously, thinking about all the ways this could complicate their lives, all the unknowns and uncertainties that lay ahead. Then he looked at Ryan's face, at the hope and fear and love, written there in equal measure, and felt his doubts evaporate. Especially then, he said, I'd rather figure it out with you than have certainty with anyone else. Ryan's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face and making him look younger and happier than Adam had ever seen him. I love you, he said, the words tumbling out like they couldn't be contained anymore. I know it's probably too soon to say that, and I know this is all new and complicated, but I love you. I think I've loved you for a while now. Adam felt his world shift again, but this time it was a good shift, like everything was finally falling into place. The words he had been carrying in his heart for months finally had permission to exist, to be spoken out loud in the space between them. I love you too. I've loved you since that first night when you showed up with Chinese food and told me about your fear of mediocrity. Really? That long? Really, I've just been waiting for you to catch up. They were both laughing now, giddy with relief and the intoxicating rush of finally saying the words they had been carrying around for so long. Ryan bent to retrieve his forgotten hoodie, then straightened and held out his hand to Adam. Come on, he said. Let's get out of this hallway before someone finds us and asks awkward questions. Where do you want to go? Your room? We could order pizza and figure out how to be boyfriends. The words sent a thrill through Adam that he tried not to let show on his face. Boyfriends? If that's what you want, if I'm not moving too fast. You're not moving too fast, but are you sure? This is all new for you. Ryan squeezed his hand, his expression growing serious. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I know I don't have all the answers, and I know I'm going to need patience while I figure some things out. But I know I want to be with you. I know that what I feel for you is real and important and worth whatever complications it brings. The sincerity in his voice made Adam's chest tight with emotion. This brave, wonderful person was choosing him, choosing this uncertain but beautiful thing they were building together. And Adam felt like the luckiest person in the world. They walked back to Adam's dorm together, hand in hand, the borrowed hoodie draped over Ryan's other arm. The campus was quiet at this hour, most students either studying or already asleep, and they encountered only a few people on their way across the quad. Adam felt hyper-aware of everything, the way their fingers fit together, the sound of their footsteps on the pavement, the way Ryan kept glancing over at him like he was making sure this was really happening. The night air was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and the promise of winter. Street lamps cast pools of yellow light along the walkways, and in the distance, Adam could see the warm glow of windows in the dormitories where other students were probably cramming for midterms or watching movies with their friends. The normalcy of it all felt surreal when everything in Adam's world had just been turned upside down in the best possible way. Are you nervous? Ryan asked as they climbed the stairs to Adam's floor. Terrified, Adam admitted, but in a good way, like the kind of scared you get before something amazing happens. I keep thinking about all the things I need to figure out, like how to tell my parents or what this means for my future or whether I'm going to be any good at this. Adam stopped walking and turned to face him, still holding his hand. The stairwell was dimly lit, but he could see the uncertainty in Ryan's eyes, the way his free hand was fidgeting with the sleeve of his jacket. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. We can take it one day at a time, one conversation at a time. The only thing that matters right now is that we both want this. I do want this, more than I've ever wanted anything. Then that's enough for now. They reached Adam's room and he fumbled with his keys for a moment before managing to unlock the door. The space felt different somehow, charged with new possibilities now that Ryan was entering it as something more than just a friend. Ryan set the hoodie down on Adam's desk and turned to survey the familiar room with fresh eyes. The room was small but comfortable, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window that looked out over the quad. Adam's side was neat and organized, with books arranged by subject and a small collection of plants on the windowsill. His roommate Marcus was spending the night at his girlfriend's place, which meant they had the room to themselves. "It's weird being here now," Ryan said, "knowing that everything's different." "Good weird or bad weird?" "Good weird, really good weird." Ryan moved closer, reaching for Adam's hands again. "I keep wanting to touch you. Is that okay? I know we should probably talk more, figure things out, but I just want to be close to you." "That's more than okay." They settled on Adam's bed, sitting cross-legged, facing each other like they had so many times before. But now Ryan's hands were resting on Adam's knees, and the space between them hummed with acknowledged attraction. Adam felt like he was seeing Ryan clearly for the first time, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the small scar on his chin from a childhood accident, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he tilted his head. The lamplight cast everything in warm, golden tones, making the familiar space feel intimate and special. Adam's desk lamp threw soft shadows across the walls, and the sounds of the dormitory settling around them created a cocoon of privacy that made the outside world feel very far away. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said. "Always." "When did you know? That you liked guys, I mean." Adam considered the question, thinking back to the gradual realization that had unfolded over years rather than moments. "I think I always knew on some level, but I didn't have words for it until high school. There was this guy in my chemistry class, and I spent the entire semester finding excuses to be his lab partner. I told myself I just wanted to be friends with him, but really I was completely infatuated. What happened? Nothing. I was too scared to do anything about it, and he graduated and went to college across the country. But that was when I stopped being able to pretend I was straight." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "I think I've been pretending for a long time without realizing it. Like I was following a script that everyone expected me to follow. Dating girls because that's what guys like me were supposed to do, but it never felt quite right, you know? Like I was always acting a part instead of being myself. And now I feel like myself for the first time in years. Sitting here with you, talking about this, it feels more real than anything I've ever experienced." Adam felt his heart swell with affection for this brave, confided, wonderful person who had somehow chosen him despite all the uncertainty and fear. "I'm proud of you for being honest about it. I know it's not easy. It's easier with you. You make me feel like it's okay to not have all the answers." They talked for hours, sharing stories and fears and hopes for the future. Ryan told him about the confusion he had felt in past relationships, the sense that something was always missing no matter how hard he tried to make things work. Adam talked about the loneliness of keeping his sexuality hidden, the way he had learned to edit himself in conversations and social situations. "I used to watch you with Sarah and feel so jealous," Adam admitted, as they lay side by side on his narrow bed, Ryan's head pillowed on his shoulder. "Not just because I wanted to be with you, but because I wanted to be able to be open about wanting someone the way you seemed to want her. Except I didn't, really. I thought I did. But looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of being in love than I was with her, specifically." Ryan's fingers traced idle patterns on Adam's chest through his t-shirt. "With you, it's different. It's not about checking boxes or meeting expectations. It's about you, specifically you, and the way you make me feel like the best version of myself." The confession made Adam's chest tight with emotion. He had spent so many nights lying in the same bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondering what it would be like to have Ryan here like this, to hold him and be held by him. The reality was better than anything he had imagined, warm and comfortable and right in a way that made everything else fade into insignificance. They fell asleep like that, fully clothed and wrapped around each other, and Adam woke up the next morning with Ryan's face buried against his neck and sunlight streaming through his window. For a moment he lay still, afraid that moving might break the spell and reveal that the previous night had been an elaborate dream. The morning light was soft and golden, filtering through the thin curtains and casting everything in warm tones. Adam could hear the sounds of the dormitory coming to life around them. Doors opening and closing, voices in the hallway, the distant hum of the coffee machine in the common room. But none of it felt real compared to the weight of Ryan's body against his, the soft whisper of his breathing, the way his hair tickled Adam's chin. Then Ryan stirred, lifting his head and blinking sleepily at Adam with a smile that was soft and genuine and completely real. His hair was disheveled from sleep, sticking up in impossible directions, and there were pillow creases on his cheek. He looked young and vulnerable and absolutely beautiful. "Good morning," Ryan said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks. You?" "Same." Adam reached up to smooth down Ryan's disheveled hair, marveling at the fact that he was allowed to do that now. "Any regrets?" "Only that it took us so long to get here." Ryan leaned down to kiss him, a soft morning kiss that tasted like possibility and new beginnings. "What about you?" "No regrets, although I should probably warn you that I'm going to be insufferably happy for the foreseeable future." Ryan laughed, the sound bright and unguarded in the morning light. "I think I can live with that." They spent the morning in bed, talking and kissing and marveling at the newness of being able to touch each other freely. Ryan called in sick to his morning class, claiming he was coming down with something, and Adam rearranged his schedule so they could have breakfast all together in the dining hall, where they sat closer than strictly necessary and shared secret smiles across their coffee cups. The dining hall was busy with the usual morning rush. Students grabbing quick breakfast before heading to class or settling in for longer meals with friends. Adam and Ryan found a small table by the window, and Adam was hyper-aware of every casual touch, every shared glance, every moment when Ryan's knee brushed against his under the table. "People are going to notice," Ryan said as they walked across campus afterward, their hands brushed together but not quite holding hands yet. "Are you okay with that?" Ryan considered the question seriously, his expression thoughtful as they navigated the morning foot traffic. Students hurried past them with backpacks and coffee cups, everyone focused on getting to their next class or meeting. The campus was alive with activity, but Adam felt like he and Ryan were moving in their own bubble, separate from the rush around them. "I think so. I mean, I'm nervous about it, but I'm more nervous about hiding this. I don't want to pretend we're just friends when we're not. We can take it at whatever pace feels right for you. There's no rush, I know." "I know, but I also don't want you to think I'm ashamed of this, of us, because I'm not. I'm actually kind of proud of us, if that makes sense." It did make sense, and Adam felt a warm glow of affection for Ryan's honesty and courage. They were both navigating uncharted territory, but they were doing it together, and that made all the difference. The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful revelations. They told their closest friends first, Christine and Ryan's roommate Peter Harris, both of whom reacted with varying degrees of surprise and support. Christine had merely raised an eyebrow and said she was glad Adam had finally grown a backbone, while Peter had needed several conversations to process the information but ultimately came around. Christine's reaction had been particularly satisfying. She had taken one look at them walking into the bookstore together, noticed the way they kept gravitating toward each other, and announced that it was about time they figured things out. She had then proceeded to give them a lecture about communication and honesty that had left them both laughing and slightly embarrassed. Peter had been more complicated. As Ryan's roommate, he had witnessed firsthand the confusion and restlessness that had preceded Ryan's revelation. His initial reaction had been surprise mixed with concern, worried about how this might affect their friendship and living situation. But after several long conversations with Ryan, he had come around, even offering to help them navigate the social aspects of being a newly out couple on campus. Ryan's parents were a bigger challenge, requiring a carefully orchestrated phone call that left Ryan shaky but relieved. They were confused but loving, asking questions that Ryan couldn't always answer, but promising to try to understand. Adam had held his hand during the call, offering silent support as Ryan stumbled through explanations and reassurances. Mom, I know this is unexpected, Ryan had said, his voice trembling slightly as he gripped Adam's hand. But I need you to know that this isn't a phase or a rebellion or anything like that. This is who I am, and Adam is important to me. The conversation had lasted over an hour, filled with tears and confusion and ultimately acceptance. Ryan's mother had cried, not from disappointment, but from worry about the challenges her son might face. His father had been quieter, asking practical questions about school and future plans, trying to understand how this fit into the life they had envisioned for their son. Adam's parents had been easier, having suspected for years that their son was gay and simply relieved that he was finally happy. His mother had immediately started asking when she could meet Ryan, while his father had offered awkward but sincere support and promises to love whoever made Adam happy. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Ryan confessed one evening as they studied together in the library, their feet tangled under the table. Like this is all too good to be true and something's going to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong, Adam assured him. Or if something does, we'll figure it out together. You're very confident for someone who's never had a boyfriend before either. I'm confident in us, in this. Adam gestured between them, encompassing everything they had built together over the past month. I know it's new and complicated, but it's also the best thing that's ever happened to me. Ryan's expression softened, and he reached across the table to squeeze Adam's hand. Mine too. I just want to make sure I don't mess it up. You won't. We won't. 3 months later, they were back in that same hallway where everything had changed. But this time Ryan was returning a different hoodie, one that Adam had left in his room after spending the night. They had fallen into an easy rhythm, splitting time between their respective dorm rooms and slowly merging their lives in the small ways that couples do. The hallway looked exactly the same, with its fluorescent lights and bulletin boards and industrial carpeting, but it felt completely different now. Where once it had been the site of nervous confessions and tentative first kisses, now it was just another place where they happened to meet, comfortable and familiar, and theirs. You know, Ryan said as they stood in the same spot where they had first kissed, I used to walk down this hallway every day and never really notice it. Now every time I'm here, I think about that night. Good thoughts? The best thoughts, this is where my life actually started, you know? Everything before that feels like I was just going through the motions. Adam pulled him closer, marveling at how natural it felt now to hold Ryan in his arms, to kiss him without fear or hesitation, to love him openly and completely. The transformation from that nervous, uncertain night to this easy intimacy felt miraculous, like watching a flower bloom and fast forward. They had learned each other's rhythms and preferences, the way Ryan liked his coffee and how Adam needed exactly 8 hours of sleep to function properly. They had navigated their first fight, a stupid argument about whose turn it was to do laundry that had ended with tearful apologies and promises to communicate better. They had celebrated Adam's birthday with a surprise party that Ryan had organized with Christine's help, complete with a cake shaped like a stack of books. I love you, Adam said, because he could say it now whenever he wanted, because Ryan always smiled when he heard it, because the words felt like coming home every time he spoke them. I love you too, Ryan replied. And then he was kissing Adam again, right there in the hallway where it all began. And Adam thought about how sometimes the most beautiful love stories were the ones that caught you completely off guard. They had started with a borrowed hoodie in a conversation that stretched long past the time when they should have said goodnight. They had found each other in the space between friendship and something more, in the courage to ask difficult questions and the bravery to answer them honestly. Now, as they stood wrapped around each other in the quiet hallway, Adam understood that sometimes the most frightening dares led to the most beautiful discoveries. Sometimes you had to risk everything you already had to find out what you could become. Sometimes love meant learning to trust that the person you cared about most would catch you when you finally worked up the courage to fall. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting the same harsh glow they always had, but everything else had transformed. Where once there had been uncertainty and longing, now there was certainty and joy. Where once there had been careful distance, now there was closeness that felt like coming home. Ready to go? Ryan asked eventually, though he made no move to step away. Ready, Adam said. And he was, ready for whatever came next, ready for the challenges and joys of loving someone brave enough to rewrite their own story, ready for a future that felt as bright and full of possibility as the smile on Ryan's face. They walked away together hand in hand, leaving behind the place where they had first dared to reach for something they both wanted but had been too afraid to name. Behind them, the hallway settled back into its familiar quiet, but it held their secret now, the memory of two people who had found the courage to stop pretending and start living. In the end, it had been simple. A borrowed hoodie, a quiet conversation, and the decision to stop being afraid of what they might find if they looked closely enough at what they already had. Sometimes love was complicated and dramatic and life-changing. And sometimes it was as easy as staying to talk long after the hallway got quiet, as natural as finally saying the words you had been carrying in your heart all along. The future stretched ahead of them, full of unknowns and possibilities, challenges and celebrations. There would be more difficult conversations with family and friends, more moments of doubt and uncertainty, more times when they would have to choose courage over fear. But they would face it all together, these two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and discovered that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. As they disappeared around the corner, their laughter echoing softly off the walls, the hallway returned to its usual quiet. But something had changed there, something permanent and beautiful. It had become a place where two people had chosen love over fear, honesty over pretense, and each other over the safety of staying alone. And in a world that could often feel cold and uncertain, that kind of transformation was nothing short of miraculous.